Hello, everyone. Welcome to the new episode of AI Chronicles Beyond Algorithms. If you are in the space of AI, in the domain of AI, you know that the overall AI as a domain is evolving at a lightning speed. Whatever was relevant yesterday is not relevant today, and whatever is relevant today may not be relevant tomorrow. And AI as a domain is impacting different facets of our lives, and we are delegating a lot of our decision making to these recommendations provided by these algorithms. We are delegating important life altering decisions of legal sentencing, loan approval, college approvals or submissions and admissions, as well as the job selections to these algorithms. And also some of the less important and less vital decisions around what to eat, what to wear, where to travel, whom to make friends with on social media, and whom to date are all being delegated to these algorithms. So these algorithms are shaping different facets and aspects of our life. So in that context, we as both users and consumers of these recommendations have to have some understanding of how these algorithms are being built and how they are shaping our decision making process. So, this podcast primarily focuses on giving that particular clarity, and it's a getaway for most of the people in the AI domain, as well as the practitioners in other domains who are interested to get into the AI domain to understand not just the algorithms, but the real humans who are shaping these algorithms, some of the challenges that they have faced, some of the learnings that they've had along the way. So I'm super excited to begin the newest episode of our podcast on AI Chronicles Beyond Algorithms with our amazing and esteemed guest, Dr. Pramod Singh. Pramod has been my mentor. He's a great corporate leader. He has a very diverse profile. He has been holding multiple leadership positions in the corporate sector, in the academic sector, as well as he has ventured in the entrepreneurship and innovation domain as well. So we'll get to hear a lot about his experience. He's one of the rare guests who comes with such diverse background to our podcast. So I'm super excited and intrigued to learn more from his journey and from the insights that we are going to uncover through this conversation. Welcome, Dr. Pramod.
Thank you, Srijana, and thank you for having me on the AI Chronicles Beyond Algorithms. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. So, Pramod, you have had a very great career trajectory in the corporate sector, but also very recently you moved to academia. So, I would like to understand a little bit about your journey, what transpired this particular move, and also you have entrepreneurial ventures with companies that you have co-founded. Can you walk the audience through your background?
Sure. A lot of times our career decisions get shaped by multiple things which may not directly be part of your education and things like that, right? So for a little bit of my background, I was born in US when my dad was working on his PhD, went back to India when I was fairly young, grew up there, got my early education there, and then came back to US for my graduate degree and PhD. Started working over here, had stint at Walmart, I think where you are presently, right? Then 15 years in Austin, Texas. Went with HP to India and Bangalore, spent 5 years there, came back to US again in Bay Area, and then moved to Raleigh with a fintech company called Yodlee. And this is where I got in touch with Duke, went there for a guest lecture, and that slowly turned into a full-time offer. And here I am, as part of their AI program. I'm one of the professors there, as well as have a leadership role. I grew up on a university campus. My dad was a professor, so there was always this attraction for education. I spent maybe more than 25 years in industry across multiple domains. Probably that little bit of it, that genetics of growing up on a campus played into that decision, right? And even when I was comparatively younger, I wanted to be associated with the university.
That's wonderful, Pramod. Yeah, I completely agree. I was born to a family of academics myself. Both my parents were professors, so I completely resonate and understand with that feeling. There are certain pros and cons in being in the corporate sector versus being in academia, especially in the context of AI, right? So when we want to experiment, it requires significant amount of investment, both from the management side as well as from the business side. But being in academia, we may not necessarily have access to that much amount of investment that a corporate would have. However, today academia is not necessarily very traditional in that context because it's not just about theoretical aspects. Today, there are a lot of these capstone projects and industry collaborations. So, academic domain and ecosystem is also evolving from being more theoretical to being more practical. If you can weigh in terms of pros and cons of being an AI practitioner in the corporate sector versus being an AI practitioner in the academic ecosystem, and if someone wants to make this transition, what are the things that they should be considering?
Very, very good question, Shrujana. And yeah, let me kind of give my perspective on it, right? And I did spend 25 years in industry across different domains and have made this recent transition about a couple of years ago, right? To your first question around access to compute and resources, I think things are changing pretty fast. It depends on where you are. Like a university like Duke, probably has access to similar kind of a compute you will find in a big company. So I don't see any deterrence there. I mean, these educational institutes are evolving really, really fast, and now with access to cloud compute and all that, I mean, I think those barriers are falling pretty quickly. It's a spectrum, may not be true for all classes of educational institutes all over the world, but I do see where it was maybe even 10, 15 years ago, things are very, very different, right? If you are working in a top university, you get access to some of the brightest mind in the world, keeps you young at heart. A lot of the universities are now having programs where they really want people with real industry experience. Like, for example, in our program, what we are teaching is really, really recent, right? Some of our courses change, every 6 months. Very important to bring in the real experience. Show the battle scars, right? Tell what works, what does not work to the student. Our job is to prepare them to get into the job market, especially in the AI space. Show authenticity, tell about the things which work, tell about the failure points that you had, what trade-offs that we have to do. I mean, all of us, I mean, I have built multiple big systems across multiple domains. Every single time you end up taking a trade-off between the quality of an output or accuracy of a model versus the compute cost or the time it takes to go run the model. It's important that don't show the best case scenario, show a real picture. Broadly speaking, I would say that shift the mindset from velocity to depth. The academia does give you an opportunity to kind of go take problems and solve them really, right? That pressure of the quarterly earnings announcement, are not there. So you have an opportunity to go have cross-functional collaboration. You can and choose your collaborators. You can work with that. Say in some sense, corporate rewards more speed and iteration. Academia rewards more long-term solving the problem connected. For the folks, I think it's important, especially on this side all as well, stay connected with the academia. Bring in people, for guest lectures, do capstones. But I do see that, the world is sort of coming together. We get a lot of, ideas to learn from each side. And for me personally, the sweet spot is the intersection. A lot of my learnings, I've been able to bring them into the classroom settings. And I do believe a lot of the learnings I'm having with some bright students where I'm continuously learning, I'm taking it back to my colleagues in the industry or even in the entrepreneurial culture that I have, right? So it's healthy to kind of, go both ways and create an opportunity to stay at the intersection, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, several years ago, I started accepting some of the advisory board positions with academic institutions because there was a significant gap between what academia trains students for and what was expected out of them in the industry, especially in the AI domain, because people wanted to work on natural language processing algorithms all the time, now agentic capabilities all the time, not necessarily understanding what are the problems to solve the problems, choosing the right kind of algorithms, whether it could be rule-based algorithms to that of the conventional algorithms versus large language models or genetic AI algorithms, right? So it has been a rewarding experience, but I see that there is a significant evolution in terms of how academia is evolving to understand more of the practical constraints that exist in the industry. Switching gears a little bit, right? I wanted to understand, you have been a co-founder of multiple companies, right? Two to name are Trialogix and Inquisit. Could you briefly introduce both and share about your entrepreneurial journey, along with some of the key lessons that you have learned along the way?
To give you a little bit of a background story, I mean, after I joined Duke, and I came in here as an executive in residence, you're talking to your colleagues, and my co-founder John Reifschneider, who's the director of the AI program, we've been brainstorming quite a bit, and he also came from industry, from an analytics side of the fence. We felt that level of penetration and more importantly, getting the value out of AI was not happening in the classical research space. So that was a trigger point of thinking about something with a lot of things evolving with LLMs, agentic AI coming in. Can we go dramatically revolutionize this space, right? And this is about year and a half, 2 years ago. That's where was the Inquisit was born, right? So which is a native AI research infrastructure platform that we created. We wanted to bring a bit of an aspect of it giving back as well, and we registered this as what is called a public good company. And that was an amazing journey. There are more than 25 million papers that have been published across different fields, right? Over the time period, right? And if you're a researcher, when I went back to my time when I was doing PhD, I remember that the what we call the background work, where you go look at the literature and all, that took me almost 10 to 12 months, right? Because my guide has given me these things to go look at it. You go find these papers in library, you Xerox them, read through them, you understand probably 10% of it, you make an opinion. And this is always going in our head, right? You go from there, and if you work with a platform like Inquisit, where now we have access to every published paper that we have, you can almost in a natural language talk to it, figure out and bring in all the exactly relevant paper with their synopsis, and help you do a much deeper research where you can focus your time on thinking, not a lot of this mechanical work. So that's where Inquisit started. And, we got better and better at that, and thousands of users using it across the world. And we are part of what is called a research triangle area here in North Carolina, which has three top universities: Duke, North NC State, and University of Chapel Hill. So there's a lot of research which happens in this space beyond the academia setting. I mean, this is what they call the clinical research capital of the world. I mean, we started to get a lot of interest into the clinical trial space, right? People said, oh, you can do that. You can synthesize research. You can help, write papers, and things like that. And we started to kind of hone in on trying to go help that space, particularly the use case around, how do you design smarter, faster, and more efficient, clinical trial protocols. This is a space that can take months, maybe years to go do that. And can we use the power of AI to do the first cut maybe in hours, and then have humans focus on that? The genesis was from our real problems with our colleagues. The Inquisit started. Then the clinical trial part got a lot more specific to one domain. So we thought if we keep it generic, you're not doing a service to either the pure researchers or the clinical trial space. So we spun it off. It wasn't planned that way. It just happened along the way. So the Inquisit part is more of a research platform, and Trialogix is more deeply concerned. And again, if I look back from the public good perspective, if we can start to shave off maybe 6 months, years of the process of drug discovery, right? And drugs can come to the market an year, 2, 3 years earlier than typical 10 to 12, 14-year cycle that the clinical trials go through. That's a very big thing, right? As we are evolving as a society, as we are looking at the problems, one of the things I would say is when you start focus on for the lack of a better word, a painful, expensive problem. The problem which is really hard, and difficult to do for a particular well-defined user group. I mean, rather than falling in love with the technology, right? A lot of us who come from the space get too much associated with the technology, the model, our UI, right? Start from the other side of the fence. Other one is choose your co-founder very wisely. I mean, the trust, complementary skills are very, very important, right? That's something that gets ignored a lot. It's a matter of people who can bring in complementary skills, have full trust. That's something that's very, very important, right? In the space we are in, I mean, the speed is of essence, but patience is very important, right? It's a little contradictory, but I really mean it, right? You have to iterate really fast, but you have to be patient in terms of the outcomes and how do you position that. And maybe a little bit more specific to the one of the problems we are solving, I would say that continuous feedback loops with real users. Um, Especially if you happen to be in a regulated industry, it's very important that you understand the domain really, really well, because you can in some case solve a very complex problem, but you may be on the wrong side of a regulation that you missed, and the whole thing can fail, right? So regulated industry, I think the patience part of it and the due diligence becomes even more important.
So true, Pramod. So I see that there's a lot of innovation happening across the domain, right? As you rightly mentioned, you are driving innovation as well, seeing some of the problems, some of the pressing problems that humanity is facing, and how do we give back to the society, but also driving meaningful outcomes for the business, being patient, going slow to go fast, especially because of the regulations that exist. I am specifically intrigued about some of the interesting AI trends that are shaping the industry today, right? May it be in terms of infusion of humanities in the AI development lifecycle, or it could be adoption of the distillation models, could be rise of autonomous agents, or prominence that the voice modality is getting across different applications, right? So there's a significant innovation happening across different parts of the technology stack, starting from the silicon engineering layer to that of the applications layer as well. So I wanted to understand from your perspective, what are the trends that you find more fascinating and exciting?
Very good question. I was thinking about this maybe a couple of weeks ago. While I love to walk here in this area. This area is beautiful with a lot of trails, right? And maybe when I look back, especially my career, probably yours as well, evolved mostly around the model layer and the application layer, right? But now with a lot of this AI revolution coming in, and it's much bigger than that, right? And I think Jensen Hong described that he called the five-layered cake, if I remember correctly, right? Starting from the energy layer to the chips and infrastructure models and applications, right? And honestly, what is exciting is that there's an innovation happening across all, right? A lot of the visibility, at least for professionals like us, is on the top two layer. But how dramatically the world is evolving, right? You have to kind of look at the whole thing in totality. An energy layer, massive innovation is happening with hyperscalers, the consumption of electricity, and that you have to go drive that. Not my personal area of expertise, but I do get fascinated reading about these things in the news. Silicon and the hardware layer, where the Nvidias of the world are making lot of massive innovation, right, in terms of chips and the computing approaches. Cloud infrastructure layer, full stack solutions are helping us out. I really believe the cloud ecosystem is the one which really democratized the adoption of AI. After HP, I joined a small company called Yodlee, and we were doing some massive amount of compute, right? In the beginning in 2015. The only reason we were able to economically sustain that we could do this on one of the commercial clouds, right? Otherwise, to have the hardware to do that class of compute would have been more than the revenue of the company just to go acquire that, right? So I do believe that that the cloud has dramatically accelerated the innovation, right? Lot of the business cases which were not feasible with your hardware became completely feasible with the cloud, right? Model layer is where we both know is with LLMs coming in, multimodal models coming in, the longer context windows. This is the space we live in, right? And we feel good about. And finally, the application layer, so it pilots the production. So if I look at the whole thing, what excites me most is I think we have started to see the convergence, right? I have started to see that people looking at the big picture at conferences, talking about that. But from my perspective, where it touches the humanity is most important. And that's where the application layers are, right? I talked about Trialogix. I feel so good that bringing in AI into the medical field, right? Maybe shortening the drug discovery life cycle by a third. It's an amazing things to do. I'm seeing applications in agriculture across the world. You're really trying to now take it to the last mile, right? The people who would not have been on this path had education. We are seeing lot of different things, right? But I still think a bit of an analogy around with 2000, what was the time period? 2005, 6, when the Apple's, App Store came in and the initial applications were you playing a game here, doing the things like that. A lot of the value creation happened after 4 or 5 years when the Ubers of the world came in, DoorDashes, which became part of our life. I still believe with this AI layer, we are still in that, playing the game phase, right? There's still a lot more applications coming in, right? that will fundamentally change a lot of things for us, right? So very exciting time, for us to be either a student or working in the space.
Absolutely, Pramod. And also, it's so interesting that we started with what we're talking about, the application layer. There's a lot of innovation happening in the silicon layer at this point in time. Very recently, I was part of GTC and the amazing technological advancement that is happening, not only in the silicon engineering layer or the application layer, but also as we are evolving towards physical AI with robotics, infusion of AI into augmented reality and virtual reality, creating unique shopping experiences, especially in the retail sector, like creating adaptive retail spaces. It's just fascinating in terms of how things are evolving. I also feel intrigued by how conversational these chatbots are becoming. And now they have an ability to engage in fluid, multi-turn conversation with multiple users. So it's becoming extremely difficult to distinguish and pinpoint whether we are talking to a chatbot or a human, because they are getting better at perception, understanding the connotation, and are doing a great job in terms of engaging the customers across the customer journeys, right? And also in the context of the overall divergence of AI development focus, we are seeing that there's a school of researchers who are focusing on making sure that AI is getting better at the humanities skill set, which could be around language learning ability, creative thinking ability. And there are a school of researchers focusing on making AI more superior when it comes to quantitative skills of coding as well as math problem solving, etc. And we are expecting these skills to converge for us to achieve artificial general intelligence, the holy grail that everybody in the industry is rooting for. So I'm super excited about what future holds for us. To conclude, we ask this question to all of our guests, right? So I would love to understand, what is that AI tool or application that you use, or you find yourself guilty of using significantly, uh, on the personal basis, right? Not necessarily for work, but on the personal basis, something that you cannot do without.
Good question, right? I would probably like to reduce the usage a little bit, I guess. But broadly speaking, I think I like Claude for my like daily things right now. Sometimes just to organize my thinking, I use OpenAI. A lot of simple things around drafted an email. You want to make sure that tonality is correct. Those kind of little things. Claude is awesome, right? We do, use our own tool, Inquisit, for some of the research work because it brings in a lot better output, right? So we definitely use that quite a bit. I'm a bit of a news buff, like to be on top of current affairs and all more than I should be. And one of the things I like to do here is to go on long walks to use the voice mode on Perplexity. So while you're walking, you use that time to just brainstorm with yourself, right? So I'm not very good at that, but that's something I want to pick up, right? Thinking productively there. I think the whole idea is to that you augment your thinking, then you place that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Pramod. We got to learn a lot from your journey, as well as the amazing work that you're doing with your companies that you're co-founded, more in terms of giving back to the society and expediting the work that is happening in the healthcare sector as well. So super excited about like all the new possibilities of that the AI can bring to table, and some amazing innovations that one could drive in this space. I think our audience have learned a lot about your personal journey and the key learnings that you had, and maybe now weighing in some of the options of looking at the intersection of industry and academia as well, right? So this has been a very fruitful and a meaningful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. We truly appreciate this partnership, and we are honored to have you as a guest. Thank you
And
so
thank you,
much.
Sujan. I really enjoyed the conversation and always good to see you again here. Thank you.
Thank you.